father, our brother, our friend, Tom, TJ to the kids. We come to you in our grief, seeking comfort and peace in your loving presence. Thank you for the gift of his life and for the memories we cherish and for the love that he shared with us. As we mourn his passing, may your grace guide us through this difficult time, and may his spirit find eternal rest in your loving embrace. Amen. Amen. I'm going to ask my brother to come up and say a few words, and then Sister Kathy will come.
Good afternoon, family, friends, Tom Stout. It's going to be tougher than I thought. Sometimes I'm a pretty intense guy, and I wear it on my sleeve, and I'll try and get through this as clean as possible. When Tammy asked me if I'd like to speak at TJ's funeral, I didn't hesitate, but I was struggling with what to say, what memories to share. TJ and I haven't been really close for a while. Life gets complicated, gets busy. We all go about chasing our own paths and our own goals, and we just kind of, some relationships, some things take a back seat as you're chasing around and doing your thing. And I'm really bad at that. I get tunnel vision. My wife of 30 plus years and my son Devin are my world, and that kind of takes up 95 to 98% of my time. But I soon circled back to a conversation that I was having with my brother Timmy about our childhood in Washington. And this brought back many amazing memories that I'll briefly share with you today. Back up just a hair. I think I was about 8 years old when my mom and Tom started dating, and it was TJ to us. I later found out that it was for tangerine juice, had something to do with high school or college. I can't recall for sure. But looking back, it must have been extremely difficult for him to pursue a relationship with my mom, having 4 kids. I know it was a tough thing for him to do, but he loved my mom, and we welcomed him with open arms. It wasn't long before things progressed to marriage and a fresh start in Kent, Washington. When my mom and my father, Norm, divorced, she often worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Made family life a bit tough, but with our grandparents living not too far away, it made it doable with a home away from home. So it was a complete change of pace when we moved to Washington. We had our mom around all the time. We always had home-cooked meals, lots of family time around the house. My mom was the happiest I can remember. She always baked. She loved to cook. She had friends in the neighborhood. It was just an amazing time. We had a giant window in the front living room. She painted it for every holiday, every different season. It was just a great time. And this was all possible because of TJ. He took the responsibility for our family without hesitation. And he took it seriously, and he wanted my mom to stay home, and he wanted a traditional family life, and it was amazing. He provided a better life for all of us in a stable environment. I can't stress enough how honorable and how amazing this was for him to do. To grow up in a loving home, surrounded by family and support, I just can't imagine what life would have been like without having him in our time in Washington. Going back to my conversation with Timmy, one thing that he touched on was TJ's dedication. So TJ worked for Napa and he traveled a lot. He was computer tech, and so he was always on the go. But he never missed a baseball game. He never missed a wrestling match. He was always there No matter how far he had to drive, no matter the work situation, he made it. And he was always there for us. And when we didn't have a sports season, it was always a constant game of over the line. Or throwing the ball around the backyard. And he was very competitive. I remember the first time I beat him at chess, and he threw the board across the room. And that was a bit of a shock for a 12-year-old. Because he wasn't really prone to showing intense emotions. But his competitive nature may be why he not only told us about picking on his sisters growing up, but he also was willing to demonstrate those techniques on us. I don't know how many of you remember the finger tweaks or the wrist lock. That was not my favorite. But back to baseball. With only 4 of us, it was impossible to play a real baseball game, and so TJ taught us how to play over the line. And my brothers and TJ were always over the junior high playing over the line. And those memories are ingrained with me, and they'll go with me always. Looking back, no dad could have made more of an effort or done better. But it wasn't just sports. We had so many family outings over the years in Washington. We'd all cram into the car and we'd go to the mall. That was one of my favorites because as a young kid, an arcade and $5 in my pocket, it was amazing. And younger kids don't know anything about that because you carry an arcade in your pocket. We didn't even envision what a cell phone would look like. We rode bikes on short trips around the neighborhood and just around, just exploring. And most of the time when we went to play over the line, that's how we got over there. We rode our bikes, carried our gear. So it was always an adventure. We explored the Seattle area, all the shops and the restaurants down by the piers. It was just an amazing time. We had a super close-knit family, filled with love, laughter. I look back on those years with great fondness and love. They were truly some of the best years of my life. And I think you would hear the same from my mom and siblings. DJ and I back then had a super strong bond. We played chess a lot. We listened to a lot of music. He was my inspiration for getting into music and also making sure I had quality sound equipment to make sure it sounded good. He had high standards with that. We watched a lot of sports, and we just had an all-around good time. I will always be grateful for having him in my life. And I'd like to leave you with some very powerful words to consider, and some that I need to reflect on myself, because life gets complex and relationships can be difficult, but there isn't always a tomorrow. Later. I'll talk to you later. I'll call you later. I'll see you later. Yeah, we'll get together later. I won't be angry later. We leave too much for later, but forget later does not belong to us. Later, our loved ones are no longer with us. Later, they are just memories. Be careful that later does not become too late. Rest in peace, TJ. I'll see you on the other side.
That's a tough one to follow. Thank you, David. I always wondered where TJ came from. Now I know. And I want to say good day to the family in Australia who's watching on Facebook, and also to David's wife, Chris, who's in Oklahoma. So we did a last minute. James and I he figured out how to do that. So the service will also be posted later, and I'll send that link out if some of you want to watch it again. Anyway, I think Tom would be really pleased to see this group here. I wish we were celebrating his 69th birthday, but anyway, I never imagined I'd be writing this remembrance so soon. I'm still in shock, and I know most of you are, over Tom's sudden passing, and we rejoice with him, and we know we'll see him again, but our hearts ache, and we long to hear his wonderfully contagious laugh. I could start laughing just listening to him laugh, and I'm sure some of you have experienced that as well. I just wanted to take this opportunity to share some fond memories of my little brother and my lifelong pal. We were born 13 months apart, and we were always close, even when we were separated across the miles. My first memories extend back to our time in Quito, Ecuador, which was one of Dad's international postings with the U.S. Army. I was 3 and Tom was 2. I think the ship that took us down there, they said Mom had us on leashes because if you went overboard, they couldn't stop the ship and retrieve you. So that was probably an interesting time for my mom. And when the ship came into port in Guayaquil, it was too large to come in, so we had to be tendered ashore. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. My mother could not swim. There was no gangplank. You had to jump from the ship into the tender. So my dad took me, Jim took Tom, they jumped in, and somehow they got my mom in that boat. She was scared to death. She said she would never do anything like that again, fortunately. She never had to. The house we were living in had a porch that went around the entire second story, and it became Tom and mine tricycle racetrack. So we would have tricycle races. And apparently, and there's movie documentation of this, I would jump on the back of his tricycle, which annoyed the heck out of him, but instead of pushing me off, he just pedaled harder. And he actually managed to keep us moving. We also liked to play in Dad's Foot Locker, where he had all of his helmets and boots and fatigues. And I guess one morning we dressed up in his combat boots and helmets and marched into Mom and Dad's bedroom to wake them up. And I guess we must have been, I don't know if they ever got a picture of it, but apparently we not only woke them up, but cracked them up with laughter. The bond between Tom and I was strengthened when Dad sent Mom, Tom, and I home from Ecuador early so that Mom could give birth to our sister Mary in Salt Lake City, surrounded by family. Alas, those plans went awry when Mom went into labor on the plane before it landed in Houston. So we were all whisked away by ambulance to the Methodist Hospital in Houston. And all of a sudden, in an instant, all the adults that we knew vanished from our life. And so, as far as our 3 and 4-year-old minds knew, all we had now was each other. And we became very protective of each other. And we already were, but we became more so. Fortunately, Uncle Vanny, whose 2 children are here today, came out from Salt Lake and brought us back to Grandma and Grandpa Herman's house here in Salt Lake. And Mom, Dad, and Jim soon reappeared in our life, and all was well again in our world. And now we have a new baby sister. But we didn't get to see her for about 6 weeks because she was born very premature and had to stay in the hospital in Houston. She's here today. We also spent 5 years in El Salvador when President Kennedy appointed her dad as U.S. military and defense attaché. It's funny now, but at the time, Tom and I couldn't imagine anything worse than going to Spanish school. And as it was, we learned Spanish within a year because we were immersed in it, and it wasn't an issue. And to this day, I use my Spanish. We spent 5 idyllic years there, and we spent every Saturday either at Sunzal Beach, Lake Ilopango, or touring around the countryside. Also, another favorite place was Los Chorros, which means the falls, and it was this kind of magical place that had all these different waterfalls and flagstones across the water that you could walk across. But the favorite one for Tom and I was this resort that was built around an inactive volcano called Usalco, and it had these huge vines, and you could just grab the vines and swing out over the hotel. And we loved that. We had our own little Tarzan meals and everything. So we were always begging to go there. But El Salvador was a magical place. I know most of you know it as a place of turbulence now, but when we lived there, there was turbulence when we were there, but we got to experience the beautiful part of it. Shortly after we moved from our house in Canyon Rim to 3 Fountains East, I was upstairs working on a paper for my nursing class, and I thought I could hear somebody calling for help, and I opened the window, and Tom's yelling, and I thought, what the heck is going on? So I went downstairs, out to the carport, and I walk out and see his feet sticking out from under George Sakis's old souped-up Vega. And John and Mary probably remember that. And he had gotten his finger stuck. I don't know what he was trying to do, but his finger was stuck and he couldn't get it out. So I went into the house to get some ice and Crisco, and Mom called the emergency room for some reason, and she was a little flustered, and she told the triage nurse her son had a car stuck on his finger. And I'm sure, so the nurses will bring him in. I'm sure she envisioned a toddler with a toy truck stuck on his finger. Anyway, after a lot of time and patience and ice and Crisco, I got him unstuck, and he was finally freed from that carnivorous car. But he did love it, and I drove that car when I worked night shift at Holy Cross, and they could hear me coming blocks away because I guess it had double headers, and it was a fun car. I came to Salt Lake to surprise Mom for Mother's Day the first year after I moved to Los Angeles. And it turned out to be quite a surprising day. Tom had just purchased his Suzuki motorcycle, and we had taken it up Little Cottonwood Canyon. And on the way down, he says, maybe we should go get you a helmet. Good planning on our part. So we were on our way to get to his house, and on our way down Van Winkle Expressway, an elderly man ran a red light in front of us, and we T-boned him at 55 miles an hour. And I'm here to tell you that angels live among us. I felt somebody holding me around my waist, and I knew I was going to be okay. I must have done a tumble when I landed because I ended up with 20 stitches in my scalp. But Tom had lost consciousness, and unfortunately he was wearing a helmet, and I ran over to him. His helmet was bashed in. He'd lost his 2 front teeth, and I started doing my neurological checks because I'm a nurse, that's what we do. And they finally told me I should lay down because I was bleeding from my scalp wound. But obviously we were both okay. And I'm just so glad that he had a helmet on because none of us would be here today celebrating him because the service would have taken place a long time ago. He did go on to ultimately acquire his dream of his Harley-Davidson Fat Boy, and he really enjoyed that. I, on the other hand, never got on a bike again. Another memorable time, oddly enough, was when we were at the funeral home planning Dad's funeral. We all started giggling over something funny one of us had said. The laughter escalated, and Mother's trying to shush us, and to no avail. At that point, Miss Smarty Pants here decides to say, well, what are we going to do, wake the dead? And Mom was mortified and mumbled something about, I can't believe I gave birth to you all. Obviously, we kids were never as formal or dignified as our mother. Dad, on the other hand, would probably have loved that. Most likely, he probably would have said it if we hadn't. When Tom married Laura, he became an instant dad. Paul, David, Tim, and Tammy. They all called him TJ, and now I know why. He loved being a dad, and he was so proud to give them the best life that he could. I'm sure he was pretty strict with you guys, but he was so proud of all of you and how you turned out. I'm so glad he had that opportunity. I think if it had been up to him, he'd have probably wanted another 10 kids, but I don't think Laura was going to buy that. Tommy, I'm going to miss you so much. You were my beloved pal. You've been an integral part of my life. I'll miss your bear hugs, your laugh, your sense of humor, your Christmas visits to California with your cat, Mr. Mac. And you also would always bring a whole stack of orange sticks because you got my friends hooked on orange sticks, and you would take those to all our happy hours and pass them out. I'll even miss our heated political discussions. The 2 weeks you challenged me to listen to Rush Limbaugh were the longest 2 weeks of my life that I did survive. You impacted so many lives, and you made the world a better place. Godspeed, little brother. And now I get to read the tributes from the Australia group. This is from Jenny, who is our oldest brother Jim's wife. And Jim sadly passed away 10 years ago from the same heart condition that Tom had. So this is from Jenny. It says, Dear family and friends of Tom, so sorry we can't be there to celebrate Tom's life. He had such a good, caring nature and a big heart and would help anyone who needed help. He'll be missed by all them who knew him. Our only comfort is knowing he's with Jesus now and celebrating with his parents and his brother Jim in heaven. And when we receive the gift of salvation, accepting what Jesus accomplished for us on the cross, we can be assured we will be reunited again when our time here on earth is finished. Sending love, hugs, prayers of comfort at this sad time. Love from Australia, Jenny Stout and Jim Jewell. There's lots of Jims in our family. This is from Daryl. This is Jim's oldest son. And he and Tom became really close the last few years. They bonded over their love of guns and knives. My Uncle Tom was a good friend, one of the few relatives I really knew in the U.S. as I moved out to Australia when I was young. We shared interest in firearms and high-quality knives. He was very excited when he learned I was making knife sharpening into a business. Whenever we would visit family in the U.S., he always made an effort to be a part of things. We had many enjoyable meals, picnics, and just plain family fun times when we were there. He made a trip out to Australia to see our babies in the early 2000s. He was very complimentary of my wife, Christine, and he had the energy to join us for more activities when the rest of the family were too worn out to have any more fun. He took my brother and I to a shooting range when we last visited Utah in 2010, which was a particularly special memory for us all. He loved and appreciated food very much and was eager to take us to his favorite burger joint and ice creamery. He was a kind, gentle, and fascinating guy. He looked up to my dad and his dad and spoke warmly of them often. He was a genuine Christ follower, and we shared thoughts and understanding on the divine. He had strong political views, but he didn't let them get in the way of relationships. His sister Kathy had rather different views, but they have always shared a close bond. I'm grateful to have known Tom and to be able to grow my friendship with him over all the miles. My Aussie family had opportunities to meet him, and I'm very grateful for that. We have confidence we will see each other again, and that will be a joyful day. We miss you, Tom, the Stouties. And finally, from my other nephew, Randall, Jim and Jenny's youngest son, a few thoughts on our beloved Tom. I was always confused why he was called Sam and not Tom. Please explain, Kathy. Well, the story as I know it is my parents thought he looked like a Sam, but I don't know why they didn't name him Sam, but be that as it may, my dad had nicknames for all of us. My dad seldom called us by our given names. Mom, on the other hand, did, but Tom's nickname was Sam, mine was Sis or Pigeon, and Mary's was Bug. I remember that mixing up names is a common Stout family disability. Clearly, Grandma called him Jim so many times. Tom thought Dad was her favorite. Then one time, Grandma called Dad Sam, and suddenly Tom realized Dad wasn't his favorite. Our grandparents had a dog named Dandy. Randy also did get called Dandy by my grandpa. God rest her soul. I wish Tom had spoken and shared more. So do I. He was a wise man. He certainly looked up to Dad. He had a special bond with Kathy and loved his little sister Mary. He loved his animals. Yes, he did. Boy, did he enjoy his food. Our whole family was food obsessed. I remember the story when Dad, Grandpa, and Tom went to Swenson's to each smash an earthquake, which consisted of 8 scoops of ice cream and 8 toppings. I believe Dad and Grandpa completed the challenge, but I think Tom came up short. I then remembered hearing about Tom returning from Alaska, and he was married with 4 stepkids. He stated he was married without too much fuss. Classic Tom. We love you, Tom. You are a good man. I think you underestimated yourself. He loved his sports. I have to say it too. He was a proud Republican and unapologetic about that choice. I didn't realize he was such a strong Christian until recently. There's a 14-hour time difference in Perth, Australia, so it'll be a 3 a.m. funeral, so they're watching this in the middle of the night. I look forward to seeing the video. Love, Randall. So that's all the tributes. And I'm just happy that you all made it. It's been a really tough time and lots of memories flooding back. And they're happy memories, but I'm going to miss him, and I know you guys are too. And I'm just glad that you all came out today. And at this point, I'm going to open it up to anybody that wants to come up and give a tribute. It doesn't have to be formal if you just want to say a few words. Okay, Randy.
Tom, in 7th grade, he was in 8th grade in Spanish class. And he started speaking fluently with the teacher, and she said, "What the heck are you doing in here? And you need to be in the advanced class." And I just met a new friend. We really hit it off. I was kind of disappointed. Well, about 2 weeks later, I see Tom again at a Boy Scout meeting. We were in a Boy Scout troop that did bucket list trips, about 120 scouts, and me and Tom hit it off immediately. And we had a great time together. I remember one of the first trips with Tom, we were doing a 50-miler through the Uinta Mountains, and we got to our first campsite, the trailhead, and we had to divvy up the food. And I caught on to how Tom sticks to things in his wit. I said, "You know, Tom, you weigh 45 pounds more than me. You should carry more of the food. You know, if you're carrying all this extra weight, that's the important thing." He said, and I thought I had him there, and he said, "Well, you know, I'm 45 pounds bigger, so I eat more food." And I thought, okay, I can't get him there. And I said, "Well, Tom, you know, I own the tent, and you should carry the tent then." And I thought, okay, I have again. And Tom said, "Well, I don't think that's going to work out either, because we could split that up." And then finally I said, "Okay, Tom, I'll tell you what, I'll let you get rid of the food the first 2 days to lessen your load." And he agreed to it. Well, that night, we had one of the biggest thunderstorms I've ever been in. We were right in the cloud, and I've been in a lot of big thunderstorms, and the lightning and the thunder were simultaneous, and it just poured. And Tom looked over at me and he said, "You know what, I'm glad I made that deal with you, because you would have been out in the rain." The next day, we had a long hike, and we were at about 11,000 feet, and another thunderstorm came in. We were above the timber line, and it was pouring rain. Most of the Boy Scouts were checked out. There was only one kid, who was 11, made the cut. And the scout leaders were really worried. I mean, there was lightning all around us, and he wouldn't let us stop. And this little 11-year-old, his name was Hans Anderson, tough little kid, but he fell back and started crying, and he couldn't keep up. Tom went back and got Hans and took his pack, and we got 2 other scouts, grabbed the back, and Tom took the front, and we got off of that ridge safely. And I always remember that. A similar thing happened on another hike. We did a 70-mile hike through the Grand Canyon, and we kept passing this, I guess you'd call him a hippie back then. And he was impressed at how we kept passing them and everything. And about the last day, we were at this area heading up the North Rim, an area called Indian Gardens, and Tom saw this guy come into camp again. He came over and he said, "Could you guys spare any food?" And he told us his story. He had been down there going on a month, and he said he took 90 pounds of food, but he had eaten it all. He had been strung out on heroin. And he went down there to cleanse his body. And Tom went around to all the boys and everybody and gathered up food for a couple meals. And then found out about another boy that found a can of stew. And he managed to get that from him and took him over to that guy. And that guy, I remember the look on his face. He was so grateful. He was on his last couple of days of getting out of that canyon. And Tom had always stepped up like that. He was so gracious. And all of you that know Tom knows that Tom liked to eat. That takes heart for him to give up his food, because, I mean, we were a lot of what we had. And Tom just stepped up and had some funny things happen with Tom, too. Tom always said he was good for comic relief. He didn't plan these things. We went on a winter survival trip up above Alta. We took the ski lift up, and we had to snowshoe up to the top and do snow caves. And it's a watershed area. So they said that we had to use this little portable latrine with a seat and a bag. And if we see any yellow snow, you're going to carry this out. Well, Tom was my buddy, and he had to get up in the night. He didn't want to walk with us. So this yellow snow didn't do you think they found? So Tom had this bag, and he said all he could hear all the way down the trail was that sloshing, and he was hoping that bag wouldn't break. And he always reflected about how that was so funny to him. And he had great humility. He always accepted it and laughed at that. We were selected each year, 2 boys from each scout troop were selected for something called Order of the Arrow. And I was lucky that my best friend Tom was selected to go. And when you first get there, you have to carve this little wooden arrow. And if you violate anything, you have to carve notches into it. If you get 3 notches, you're out. Well, one of the things you can't do is like an Indian ordeal. You can't talk. Tom leaned over and whispered to me, we were digging holes for outhouses or something. Notch 1 on day 1. So later that day, this older boy that was like an assistant scoutmaster took us to do something stupid. We went to a creek and told us we had to wash the rocks. And Tom said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, notch number 2. So Tom got the second notch then. And I'm thinking, I'm going to lose my friend. It's day 1. He's got 2 notches already. The second day, he was a little bit wiser and more cautious because he didn't want to get out of that program. And they had a fire thing, and the people are dressed like Indians. And after this, they teach you some lessons and stuff, and then they take you out and they dump you off by yourself out in the forest. And they told several boys up to teach a principle. They pulled me up, and they tried to trick me into talking, and I caught on. And they pulled Tom up, and I go, oh. You can't get another notch. What are they going to do to Tom? Well, they told him he had to balance a dime on his nose and drop it in a funnel. And they put a funnel in his pants. And he put his head back like that and put the dime on it. They dumped a bunch of water down his pants. And he thought that was so funny, but he didn't talk. He had always reflected. And the lesson they were teaching was humility. Couldn't have been a better person because he was one of the most humble people I ever knew. I had moved after 9th grade to Ontario, Oregon, on the Idaho-Oregon border, and our good friend John, who's also a lifelong friend, then were more interested in cars and other things. And they'd drive up there, and I'll tell you about a few incidents. I'm sure you'll know, John. There's the bottle rocket incident, the spilled milk incident, and the missing clothes incident. And these are things that Tom didn't plan on, but the bottle rocket incident, he pointed, it was around the 4th of July, and we're in our front yard, and there's all these fields around us with tall grass. And we're out in front of the house, and Tom starts to point it and light it at a 45-degree angle, so I yelled no. And that bottle rocket went off, and the torch was spilled. And the fire is burning towards this foundation, this house they're starting to build. So we're out there trying to stomp it out, and the neighbors have hoses going and everything. And we were so lucky it didn't jump and go to this other area. They're building new houses. And after it was all over, Tom said, next time you say no, I'm going to listen to you. and it's funny looking back. Back then it kind of shook us up. And the other thing with the spilled milk is my father had a kind of a dairy business, medical distributorship. And these big trucks would come in and deliver everything. And I had to work in the morning. And John and Tom came to help me, and we had to wheel these 600-pound dollies of milk off. And so Tom's wheeling one out the back, where he caught the rear wheel of that dolly, and about 70 gallons of milk went all down the ramp, all over. Right then there was a truckload of workers right there stopping, they're pointing at him and laughing, and Tom's just shaking his head. And he felt really bad. He offered my father to pay for it. My dad said, oh, don't worry about it. These things don't happen. That they always reflect on the spilled milk that he did. That was Tom. He always took responsibility. And he said, I did make a lot of mistakes in my life, but I never heard Tom ever blame anybody else, ever. The last one was the clothes on Randy's front lawn. We went up with the boys one night, and Tom decided he's going to drink some wine. He had more than one glass too many. And so our friends dropped us off there. I'm in the front there, and I'm not washing. What I didn't know was Tom was shedding clothes. And he threw a jacket and a shirt and a few shoes, and I didn't see it. So we go and go to bed. I had to go to work early, so I'm gone. So poor John and Tom get up, and my mom sees these clothes and knows what is going on.
So you told the story about the clothes on the yard, but you know the rest of the story.
Yeah, because Tom threw up on me.
Oh,
All that wine.
That explains everything.
And that's why the clothes came off and we were going to clean them up the next morning. But I took mine in the washroom. Izzy left on the front yard, so his mom, Randy's mom, came out and was like, where are all these clothes are in the front yard?
I heard around the front yard, and for some reason I was still up, and I came outside, and he's going, I said, and so I'm trying to sneak him downstairs, and my mother goes, of course, you couldn't, Mom heard everything. She was like, what are you kids doing out there? And I was like, nothing, Mom, just helping Tom. Why does he need help?
And she was upset when she found out that Tom had been drinking. And kind of punishment, she cooked this big dinner with greasy eggs and everything else, and said, okay, you boys eat it now. And that's a lesson you won't forget, is it, John? That my mom always thought of Tom as one of her own. Everywhere I went, Tom found me. I was in the bush in Alaska. I was 90 miles from Fairbanks, and Tom got a hold of me, and I opened the door, and there's that big smiling face, and there's Tom. And in the 80s, he came down from Washington, went on a float trip through Hell's Canyon, and I was on the Snake River and with 12 of my buddies, and we had a good time. And most recently, when he was working, he had a route up in Idaho. He'd stop and stay with me a couple of nights. I talked to him most recently about every 3-4 weeks. I talk to him and talk to him online all the time. Tom truly had a big heart. He was selfless. He made a lot of mistakes, he said. He took responsibility for it. But he was the best friend. He always said that me and John were his best friends, his confidant, and he certainly was the same to us. And he enriched my life to have him in my life. I miss him tremendously. And even though you have that pain of losing him, I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed that I had Tom as a best friend. And Tom is indeed a lifelong best friend, and a lot of us don't have those anymore. Thank you for your time.
That. And just also want to thank Tammy here. She's been just a godsend, and she helped get this set up because I was in California and couldn't get here right away. And she and her husband Dinley were the ones that went over and insisted that the police break in and find Tom, because Randy, several of us had just a funny feeling that something wasn't right. So I just want to thank you for everything you've done and the effort that people came to get here today, because I know some of you came. We've got people from Oklahoma and Nevada. So it's just really great to see everybody. Some of us haven't seen each other in a long time, so it's great. It's a sad occasion, but it's great to see you guys. And Tom was not a formal person, so we didn't want to make this too formal. And he hated being the center of attention, but sorry, Tom, today you are.
And thank you from my family for all of your support. We really appreciate it.